Hello Bookish friends, welcome to my top 5 video series of 2022. In this video series I will talk about my most disappointing, most surprising, least favorite and favorite books of 2022. In this first video I will talk about my most disappointing books of 2022. I mean to clarify that these books are not the worst or my least favorite books that I read in 2022. I actually rated one of these 7 out of 10. I was expecting much more from these books and I was expecting actually to love them, but unfortunately these books really disappointed me in that manner. So let's see which books were the most disappointing books for me in 2022. I finished my second book in the month. I finished reading the graphic novel Mouse 1, A Survivor's Tale, My Father Bleeds History by Art Spiegelman. This was a non-fiction graphic biography. In this work, Art Spiegelman tells the story of his father by interviewing him in 1980s. Mr. Spiegelman was a quite wealthy Jew before World War II and at the beginning of World War II. Living in Poland, and then with his connections with some of the Germans and the government officials to escape from the oppressing Nazi regime that is happening in Poland, and also being sent to concentration camps, and especially Auschwitz is pronounced a lot in this work. One significant thing about this graphic work was that Jews were portrayed as mouses, Germans were portrayed as cats, Polish people were portrayed as pigs, and Americans were portrayed as dogs. And what did I think about this work? I have a sort of unpopular opinion about this one. Because many of my BookTube friends and my Goodreads friends really loved this graphic work. I also found it to be a very powerful story, but I didn't enjoy the way it is told because it is told in a very emotionless way, and although the events are powerful in itself, it was just events put together back to back. First they tried to escape the Jews who sided with the Nazi regime, and then the government, and then the Nazis, and then the Germans themselves, and there were always some steps to escape from this possibility of being sent to concentration camps. That annoyed me a bit. But most importantly, I really didn't like the drawing style. I can understand the reasoning behind this choice to put animal heads into human bodies to make the racism issue more distinct. But aesthetically, I found it very disturbing. Maybe it's just a me thing, I know, but it was so weird. I mostly try to read conversations and not look at the drawings. But I will read the second volume in this duology because I'm really curious about the events occurring after this volume. So overall, I gave Mouse, A Survivor's Tale, My Father Bleeds History a 7 out of 10. Work that I finished was the short story that I read for my Turkish Shelf project. I read The Snows of Klimanjaro by Ernest Heningway. Part of the flashbacks in this short story takes place in Istanbul, Turkey. In this short story, after a hunting accident in Klimanjaro, Henry has to stay in bed. During this time, he remembers the horrors of wars that he faced in his past life through flashbacks. I will talk about the Turkish aspect of this short story in a separate video. In general, I really hated the parts which takes place after the a hunting accident. Henry was very, very rude to his wife, and the things that he thought were very misogynistic. And I have to say, if it wasn't for my Turkish Chef project, and if it wasn't a very short story, I would have DNF'd it in the beginning chapter. But in the flashbacks, it was much more meaningful, and the horrors of the war and the hardships that people faced because of some political decisions was depicted quite accurately because of Heningway's past as a war correspondent in many different countries, including Turkey. In summary, I gave the short story The Snows of Klimanjaro by Ernest Hemingway an average rating which is 6 out of 10. The first book that I finished was the book that I was reading for 1001 Books Book Club. The Sea by Iris Murdoch. 1001 Book Club is hosted by Sandy at Miss Reed Reads, and we had a Discord group in which we discussed the book. In this book, Charles is a retired theater actor and a stage director. After having a very active stage life as well as love life, he decides to move a town near the sea and write his memoirs. In that town, he meets his first girlfriend and the only woman whom he claims to have loved in his life. To begin with, this book had a very uneven and inconsistent tempo. It started very slowly, then it got a bit interesting, then it dragged on, then it gradually told a very curious story. I could not wait to read the 2 chapters, and after that the tempo dropped drastically again. There were some qualities about the book which were very, very good. It was a very good psychological study of a man who thinks very, very highly of himself and also very delusional at times. And the story with his first girlfriend and what happened afterwards was very interesting. On the other hand, with the exception of these 2 scenes, I felt quite bored while reading the book. It was mostly ramblings of a man who was not sympathetic at all, and also some of the descriptions were too detailed for my taste. And if it wasn't for the Discord group, I would have probably DNF'd this book, but I'm glad I did not, although I gave it 6 out of 10. It was a great Discord discussion, and I like being in the group much more than I like the book. So thank you, Sandy, for creating this wonderful bookish community. And I finished a very short novella that I was listening for 3 days. The name of the novella is Cemile by Cengiz Aymatov. I listened to the Turkish edition of this book, and the original language of the book was Russian. In the story, a rather famous artist remembers his childhood and the summer that he carried some of the agricultural products to the government to be used for the World War II efforts. He went through this journey with his sister-in-law, Cemile. The whole story is told from the point of view of this early teen. To accompany the boy and the woman, a former soldier who has been wounded in the war, Daniel, joins them, and the relationship between the 3 characters changes as they go through this journey. Cengiz Aymatov is a very famous author in Turkey. One of his novellas has been adapted into a very beloved Turkish movie which is called Selvi Boylum Al Yazmalım. And I have previously read this novella before. Unfortunately, that novella has not been translated into English yet. But this novella, which has been translated to English, is the debut work of Aymatov. The writing style was very beautiful without actually using fancy words or flowery writing style. I really did like that aspect of the work. On the other hand, although I did not feel bored while listening to it, I did not feel any excitement towards what is happening in the book. There were some scenes which were told very beautifully, and I could picture them very well. But I think my main issue was with the character development, because we followed the point of view of the boy, and the boy was a bit unaware of what was really happening. I could not connect with the other two characters, one of them being Cemile, the titular character. So I gave Cemile by Cengiz Aymatov a 6 out of 10. And I finished another body read with Aymatov again. We body read Villette by Charlotte Bronte together. Jane Eyre by this author is one of my favorite books. So I was very excited to read another book by Charlotte Bronte. In this book, we follow the adventures of Lucy Snow through her childhood, and most of the book takes place as an English teacher in France, in the town of Villette. Lucy's relationships, including romantic and friendship relationships, are analyzed very deeply in this classic. First of all, I have to say I was very disappointed by this book. Although there were some things that I really liked about the book, my main problem was that I felt like this book was too long. The same story could have been easily told in 300 pages instead of 575 pages in the ebook edition that I read. And also, I felt like Bronte was so focused on writing very beautiful sentences. She somehow missed the plot in some of the sections of the book. The sentences were indeed very beautiful, and I enjoyed reading them at the beginning of the book very much, because it was both poetic as well as having wonderful descriptions. But because of those sentences, the plot didn't move, so I had to skim read some of these actually very beautiful sentences to get through the book. On the other hand, I really liked the complexity of the characters. Lucy Snow especially was a very realistic and complex character. Sometimes I identified with her, which made me want to continue the book, especially towards the last chapters. There were some really awesome side characters as well, and the body reading experience with Amy was great. We exchanged our ideas, what we liked and what we didn't like, in detail, and it made the reading of this book much more enriching for me. So overall, I have to admit I was very disappointed by this book, except the body reading experience. And I gave Villette by Charlotte Bronte a 6 out of 10. So those were my most disappointing books of 2022. Please comment down below, have you read any of these books? And what did you think of them? If you're a new viewer, first of all, welcome. Please like and subscribe. Hope to see you very soon. Bye. As for Turkish word of the day, since Cemile was a horse shepherd, I thought shepherd should be the word of the day. Shepherd means çoban in Turkish, and çoban is our Turkish word of the day. Have a good day.